Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining in. Actually, markets have been in a roller coaster ride nowadays. Equity markets have reached to very dizzying heights, and debt market yields have crashed. Gold is consolidating. So we thought, let's do a session on what we think of the markets and investing in general, and talk about different asset classes and our views on that. I would really request everyone to keep their devices on mute throughout the session, and whatever the questions you may have, we can take them up at the end of the session. So I'll begin my presentation with the story of fall of the Roman Empire. So the Roman Empire began in 27 BC, and the first king was Caesar Augustus. At its peak, Roman Empire conquered a majority of Europe and a significant portion in African continent. They built enormous infrastructure projects, 50,000 miles of road, amphitheater, bridges, and many more infrastructure projects they completed, which are still in use today. Even today, many of the Western countries' languages, alphabet, calendar, literature, and architecture is inspired or borrowed much from the Romans. So how could such a mighty, influential, powerful, and wealthy empire collapse? Let's see a little bit on the Roman economy. So trade was very vital to the Roman economy at that point in time. They used to import a lot of things, and they have a very established trade routes on different directions. The currency they used to for trading was denarius, and it was a coin which was roughly 4.5 grams of pure silver. It was of high purity. So the coin was worth roughly a day's wage for a skilled craftsman or a laborer. Trading generated vast wealth for the citizens of Rome. Now the problem was that the coin that was minted, the circulation of that coin was limited to the amount of silver or gold they could produce. They could capture from other land area. And at that time also, the greed for power and growth was very high within the emperors. And they thought, the amount of silver that they have, it is limiting their spending. And so how to increase their overall spending, how to, finance their pet projects like wars and building some memorials or things. So they, figured out a very creative way around the problem. And they decided, let's reduce the silver content in the coin. So in this manner, they would be able to mint more coins and of the same similar face value, and that will be used for their spending purposes. So the idea really stuck over the period of time, and it appealed them a lot. And over a period of many years, the content of silver kept going down in the coins. And where in the beginning it was more than 90% silver content in the coin. By the end of Roman Empire, it was roughly 5% of the silver. And the core was majorly the bronze, and silver coating was there, which was so poor that it could be removed within few days. So there are decades where nothing happens, and there are weeks where decades happen. Very good quote by Vladimir Lenin. So in the beginning, everything was going fine. The economy was doing, good, and they could, expand their expenses, whatever they wanted, their purchase of different goods and services. But the increase of currency in circulation did not increase the wealth. It rather increased, led to the inflation, and rather hyperinflation. So hyperinflation resulted in increasing the prices of goods and services. So now what the emperor should do, to pay for these higher cost of goods and services, given that the supply of gold and silver was finite, and they were not much area to conquer, so they decided, let's impose taxes on the citizens, and the taxes kept on going over a period of time. And although the environment was such that the inflation was also very high, so this trifecta of hyperinflation, soaring taxes, and worthless currency that destroyed many of the trade networks that they have established over the period of time. Barbarians started attacking from different directions and plundered further, wealth they had. They also, saw a period where more than 50 kings or emperors, they were either killed, assassinated, or were during the wars, or some conspiracies. So the entire trade networks were destroyed. The economy was in free fall. So whatever the trades were left, they were like mostly localized, and they went back to the barter system of trading, which was not very efficient. So this overall impact of increasing currency in circulation, that is debasement of currency, led to the hyperinflation, which led to the demise of Western Roman Empire, which would cease to exist by 476 AD. So that over a period of 500 years, Roman Empire, which began with all of its glory, it ceased to exist. Such a powerful, such a influential and wealthy empire, it didn't last. So can we draw any parallels from this story with the present times? So I would talk a little bit about how our current monetary system has come into being. In the last century, in the beginning of last century, most of the countries relied on gold standard of monetary system. What is the gold standard of monetary system? It simply is that whatever the paper currency, or whatever the coins were there, they were backed by gold. So anybody who has some paper currency, they can go to the bank or to the government and give those currencies back to them. In return, they can get the gold worth of the similar value. But after 1929 and 30, the Great Depression period, in 1931, UK decided to not follow gold standards anymore. US also followed suit and abandoned gold standards in 1933. So whatever the remnants of gold standard system was there, it was entirely abolished in 1973. So began the era of fiat currency. So fiat currency, as one can make sense of, is the currency which is not backed by any precious metal. It is, as per the government decree, it is a legal tender, and government got the free hand to print as much money as they would like, as suits to their whims and fancies. So fiat, interestingly, is derived from the word fieri, which is a Latin word, which means an arbitrary act or decree. So everything was going fine, after 1973 onwards. Governments maintained discipline with their fiscal spending. But when the subprime crisis happened in 2007, 2008, the governments got reason to print money, and they flood the economy by printing significant amount of money. So US Fed, which is a central bank of US, they printed, they expanded their balance sheet by buying the bonds and, flooding the economy with more currency, more, money in the system. So the QE1 began in, at the end of 2008, when 1.4 trillion worth of bonds were purchased and the money was, floated in the market. It was followed by QE2, when 3% of GDP, 0.56 trillion bonds were purchased, then followed by QE3, when the economy again started showing signs of, sluggishness. And at that time, $1.7 trillion of worth bonds were purchased, which were roughly about 8% of the GDP. This bond purchase resulted in expanding the Fed balance sheet from roughly $1.5 trillion to $4 trillion over the next few years. But as we are aware that the COVID resulted in significant amount of fear, locking the economies. And Fed and other central banks found a favorite playbook that they discovered, the idea that they found much appeal in after the subprime crisis. They felt like again they can manage every problem by printing a lot of money. And what they did, they started buying bonds, not just government bonds, but corporate bonds also in droves, in a huge amount, and flooding the economy with a lot of easy liquidity, with a lot of money. And the balance sheet expanded from $4 trillion, and they expected to go to $10.3 trillion, which is like roughly 30% of the GDP. So, which is again an expansion of 2.5 times within a span of 1 year. It's a huge amount of liquidity, boost that has gone into the economy. And central banks are saying that they are ready to do whatever it takes. So as you can see here, over the last few years, the US dollar printing data is there, and in this year 2020 itself, of all the US dollars printed till now, 21% have been printed in this year. So this is a significant amount of money printing happening right now. So not just that money is abundant in circulation in the system, but it is available cheap also. So Fed rate right now is roughly 0 to 0.25%, which is the all-time low rates, in the history. And they intend to keep that rate for period of another 2 years time, as per the statements given by Federal Reserve Chairman. So not just US, many other developed economies have reduced their benchmark rates. Some even going below 0%, which is very unprecedented, which nobody could ever thought of, that the interest rates will go zero and people will still be buying those bonds. So as you can see this data, roughly $17 trillion worth of global bonds are trading at negative yield. So that means, when you give money and buy a bond, you are also paying for that bond. You're not getting the interest. So this is something which is very absurd that is happening all around the world. And why people are investing in those bonds? Because many, PF funds, provident funds, many endowment funds, they have a regulatory, diktat or, requirement for investing only in bonds. So whatever bonds are available, they have to make investment. And sometimes, speculators get into it, and they believe that, okay, if the bond is trading at negative yield, so that they can, further sell it on when the yields will go further negative. So that way they will be able to make some capital gain out of these bond trading. So this excessive liquidity at cheap rates creates risk of hyperinflation and economic destabilization. So I'm not saying that we are surely going to see hyperinflation and many more problems, but it surely definitely creates a risk for such an a condition occurring in near future, as the lessons we have learned from Roman economy. And also, there have been some other instances also in the past where excessive printing, excessive supply of money resulted in hyperinflation. So that's why gold is something that, should be a necessary part of each and everybody's portfolio. We never recommended gold before 2018. But when we realized that money printing is happening at a very rapid pace, and it could result in hyperinflation, there is a higher risk of hyperinflation happening. And once hyperinflation is there, it is very difficult to control, and it leads to a lot of destabilization of existing trade routes, existing trade networks, and results in economy going down in a free fall. So just to protect ourselves against any of such eventuality, gold must be part of the portfolio. we started allocating in all our clients, portfolio roughly 10% of gold. And we think that even 15% of gold, in a portfolio won't be a bad idea. So President Herbert Hoover famously said in 1933, before gold standards were abolished in US, he said, "We have gold because we cannot trust governments." So as we saw that money is available in abundance and it's available cheap, a lot of FI money is finding its way around, different economies, wherever they could find the trading opportunity, wherever they could find, higher yields compared to what they're getting in their economy. So if we see the data, then over the last few weeks or few months, FIs have been pumping in huge amount of money in Indian equity market. Whereas on the other hand, DIS, which are domestic institutional investors, which we can say are a combining of mutual funds, insurance companies. So they have been net sellers over the last few months. As many people are also withdrawing, money because economy is not really good. They also want to be safe, and there have been many job losses. Many SIPs have been discontinued. So that's why DIs have been net sellers, where the FI is getting cheap liquidity. They have been pumping in a lot of money. And what exactly happens, whenever any institution invests money, they have also this investment committee which decides much earlier, that how much allocation should be going to, emerging markets, how much allocation should be going to developed economies and to commodities or to AIFs much earlier, before, making any correction. So they do not make any correction during the course of their allocation, decision. So if the valuation of any particular market goes up, goes up significantly, then also they will continue to, allocate as per their initial decided framework. Also, what happens, there are many passive funds which will allocate the money. So if they have got, say, 100 rupees, they have to allocate, say, 10% based on the index they are following. So any index or any indices they are following, they will allocate as per the composition in those particular index without looking at what is the valuation of that particular stock or particular economy or a stock market. So this, huge flow of FI money over the last few months resulted in skyrocketing valuations in Nifty and in our stock market of Sensex and Nifty. So we are probably trading at all-time high, PE ratios in the last 20 years, which actually presents a significant downside risk and very limited upside potential. And let's look at the status of economic recovery. We know that there has been re-emergence of cases. The cases are rising in Europe, and the economies again started suffering. So they have not gone to those levels which were earlier. But again, after the V-shape recovery, they have been going down of late. So economy has been severely impacted in major developed economies. And even in India, as per the estimates by many, economists, uh, recovery is still some years away. Whatever the GDP growth we saw in FY20, GDP, figures we had in FY20, we would surpass that only in FY23 as per, the estimation by IMF. Even Oxford Economics projected, lower potential growth for India of roughly 4.5%, which is much lower than 6.5% before the pandemic hit us. Even HSBC Holdings is saying that the potential growth or trend growth for Indian economy would be 5% post-pandemic compared to 6% before pandemic and compared to 7% before the subprime crisis in 2007-2008. So definitely we are not out of the woods, and what we saw is a series of great news on vaccine discoveries. Many vaccines which were under testing, under production, they have successfully showed very good results, and that's a wonderful news, But discovery of vaccine and it reaching to people, there's still a long way for it. There's still a lot of gap in curbing the pandemic entirely. So if we see just in India, you don't have to vaccinate everyone to destroy this virus. You just have to vaccinate about 60% of the people to achieve herd immunity. 60% of population roughly means 78 crore people in India, and each one of them need 2 doses. So it works out to be roughly 1.56 billion vaccine doses.
Given the current throughput that we have, India can vaccinate 15 million people per month.
Now, if we go with the current rate, it will take 4 years to vaccinate 60% of the population. But definitely, I mean, the capacity will increase over the period of time, but we still are talking about years. So if not 4 years, it may take another 2 years time for a pandemic to die down. So as Bill Gates also suggested that the end of the pandemic best case is probably 2022. But during 2021, the numbers, we should be able to drive them down if we take the global approach. So everything has to fall in place. Everything has to be done in best possible manner to able to curb this pandemic in 2022. So higher valuations in equity as well as in debt presents a significant amount of challenge for investments. Why even the bond is expensive? Because it has an inverted relationship with the interest, with the market yields, with the interest rates. So when the interest rates are very low level, bond prices rise. And when the interest rates are rising, bond prices fall. So this is way when the currently the interest rate all across the world is at much lower levels, and even in India it is historically at very low level we are seeing in the interest rates. The bond prices are higher at that point in time. We're not getting good enough yield on the debt side as well. So any portfolio, a conventional portfolio of 60 is to 40, 60% in equity, 40% in debt. If somebody continue to think that kind of an allocation will give them good returns over the next 10 years time, this is something which we cannot really rely upon. There have been decades, there have been many decades in the last century, in many years, which saw zero returns on this kind of a portfolio where 60% is in equity, 40% in debt. So it's a very common phenomena. People actually are influenced much by what happened in the last decade, or their memories are mostly confined to last decade or 15 years. So and we have seen the period of rising equity markets, debt giving good returns, and other asset classes also have delivered good returns. So we do not really remember that there have been periods when many asset classes combined together, they did not deliver the decent returns over the 10 years period as well. So that's why it's very important to keep that in mind, keep the risk in mind before we look for the returns. So this chart we presented in our earlier presentation also, which simply is a plot between the P ratio and the next 10 years return if you have made any investment in a particular P ratio. So P ratios are represented by this blue area, and the white line represents the next 10 years returns if the investment is done on a particular P ratio. So if you see the black circles, these are the periods when the P ratios were much above their long-term average of 20 times. And any investment done during that period of time resulted in very poor returns in the next 10 years. And similarly here you can see where the returns have fallen below 5% also in few cases. On the contrary, when you have made investments in the period when the P ratios have been below its long-term average, which you can see in the yellow circles, the long-term returns, 10 years returns are fantastic. They are in the range of 12 to 15%. So right now we are trading, Sensex is trading at close to 30 times PE ratio based on the normalized earnings of last financial year. So, having said this, it's very clear that we are trading at very expensive valuations, and expecting very good returns in equity from these levels would not be, wise. So how do we deal with the current uncertainty where all the asset classes are inflated, and how should we go about manage our portfolios during this uncertain time? So as we have been, always focusing on tactical asset allocation, and we again would love to reiterate that tactical allocation is the only key to manage your portfolios and manage uncertainties. So what you can really do is, have some allocation of 10 to 15% in gold to protect against hyperinflation, risk of hyperinflation. So that should also be, for the period of 5 to 10 years. You should not consider gold as, could produce you good returns. You should not look at from the returns point of view, but you should always look at, as an important part of your portfolio to hedge against any kind of risk. It's an insurance that should be there in the portfolio. So in a free market economy, gold is like any other currency, which is universally accepted. So one point, gold is important. Second, you can manage your equity and debt allocation by reducing your equity allocation as the markets continue to go high, and you should reduce your equity allocation when the markets continue to go high, and increase your equity allocation when the markets go down in terms of P ratio. So this asset allocation plan is just a sample plan for a moderate risk profile investor. But there could be sub asset allocation within equity allocation, and in debt allocation there could be sub asset allocation. So debt side, what we have been recommending is that you should not be investing in long-term maturity papers, because there is a risk of rising interest rates also going forward. So when the interest rates rise, then there is a problem with the debt funds with the longer maturity, because then they incur mark-to-market losses. So it's very important that one should be investing in short-term debt maturity portfolios, where the portfolio maturity should be roughly in the range of 6 to 8 months. So as and when the interest rates will rise, these mutual fund companies, the paper is getting matured in 6 months' time, they can reinvest at higher yields. So this way, you will be able to take opportunity of rising yields, rising interest rates over the period of time when you in your debt portion of the portfolio. On the equity, as I explained, one needs to reduce equity allocation when the markets are going high, and increase it when it goes down. Only problem is that when the market goes high, for example, if you see at 23 times, you have say 30% allocation in equity, and at 26 you decided to reduce by 10%, and the market goes up again, to say 28 times or 30 times. So it's always a feeling that you get, I should have waited for more time. Markets are going up. I should kind of should wait more, and then I should have exited. So you feel a little regret in taking such a decision. Similarly, on the downside, when you're increasing your portfolio allocation from say 50% to 60%, the markets are again going down. It has gone to say 13 times P ratio. Then you feel like, oh, I should have probably invested after some time. I should have waited for the right opportunity. But entire problem with this kind of emotional thinking is that you can never actually can buy on the buy on the at the bottom and sell at the top. This is not possible. You cannot time this with such a perfection. You have to take graded approach. You have to take you have to have an asset allocation plan where are you reducing equity when the markets are going up, and adding equity when markets are going down, without involving any kind of emotions or any kind of regret. If you fall for any kind of emotions and regret, then you will lose a discipline of maintaining tactical allocation. And once you lose a discipline, entire planning will go for a toss, and you will incur poor returns on your portfolio. So discipline is important without bringing emotions into our investment decision making. Thank you, everyone. I think this was all what I wanted to talk about. So I think we will end this session now. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. I will be happy to answer all of your queries. Thank you for joining in. Thanks for taking out your time. And I hope the time spent was worth spending. And have a good day. Take care. Bye-bye.